Boris Yelnikov is a New York resident who labels himself as a genius and a retired quantum physicist with an exceptionally high IQ. He holds a cynical and nihilistic worldview, displaying neurotic tendencies and a preference for solitude. He generally views others with disdain unless they prove to be as intelligent as he is, although he does have a small circle of friends who are exceptions to this. The movie begins with Boris captivating an audience through a lengthy monologue, showcasing his self-proclaimed intelligence and unique perspective on the world. He then shares glimpses of his past, including his marriage to a wealthy woman who, despite being perfect for him, became unbearable. Since then, Boris's life has taken a downward spiral, marked by a failed marriage, a decline in his career as a physics teacher at Columbia University, and a failed suicide attempt. Through a flashback, it is revealed that Boris jumped out of a window in an attempt to end his life, but instead landed on a canopy, resulting only in a limp. Aside from this, Boris exhibits some peculiar habits, such as teaching chess to children while belittling them, and frequently washing his hands while singing "Happy Birthday." Despite his constant misery, poverty, and lack of faith in humanity, Boris never hesitates to highlight his own brilliance and criticize what he perceives as the general foolishness of the world. One evening, upon returning home from teaching chess to children, Boris is surprised to find an unexpected visitor waiting for him at his front door. The visitor, Melody, is a 21-year-old with a simplistic and innocent nature. Standing at his doorstep, she humbly asks him for a meal, and Boris reluctantly allows her inside. As Melody settles in, she opens up about her background. She reveals that she grew up in a conservative Southern family in Mississippi, but decided to run away. Eventually, Melody musters the courage to ask Boris if she can spend the night, and after some hesitation, he reluctantly agrees. During their conversation, Boris quickly develops a strong hatred towards Melody, finding her lacking in intelligence, particularly disdaining her religious beliefs. In contrast, Melody embodies a completely different demeanor. She radiates cheerfulness and innocence, possesses unwavering trust in others, and maintains an optimistic outlook on life. While she holds onto her belief in a world with beauty and love, she becomes fascinated by Boris's apparent intellect and his distinctive worldview. The next day, Boris reluctantly agrees to Melody's request, allowing her to stay with him until she finds a job and becomes financially capable of getting her own place. In a surprising turn of events, despite Boris being someone who typically prefers solitude, he goes beyond his comfort zone and accompanies Melody on sightseeing adventures around New York City. As they spend more time together, Melody becomes increasingly intrigued by Boris's ways of talking. She realizes that guys her age fail to engage her intellectually, leaving her unfulfilled in her attempts to connect with them. In contrast, Boris captivates her mind and stimulates her intellect in ways that she finds both appealing and rare. After spending a month in Boris's company, Melody finds herself increasingly drawn to him, even though they have significant differences in age, background, and intellect. One evening, upon Boris's return home, Melody eagerly shares the news of her new job as a dog walker, and then she confesses her feelings for him. Sadly, Boris firmly rejects her, emphasizing his strong preference for solitude and their evident differences in their age, interests, and intellectual capacities. Not stopping there, Boris goes on a passionate rant about how love is often pointless, as it doesn't usually last. He then advises Melody to stay at his place temporarily, while she saves up enough money to find her own place. During their time spent together, Boris experiences a growing affection for Melody within him, eventually leading to him falling deeply in love with her. He even notices Melody adopting some of his habits and embracing certain ideologies that he holds dear. However, their fate takes an unexpected twist when Melody meets Perry Singleton while walking dogs at her job. Perry is immediately drawn to her and asks her out on a date. Meanwhile, as Melody goes out on her date with Perry, Boris finds himself, surprisingly, missing her company in the house. When she returns home and tells Boris about the date, she confesses that she did not feel a connection with Perry due to his overwhelming optimism and his deep fascination with the world. Boris is pleasantly surprised to hear this, as he himself embraces a nihilistic outlook on life. Over time, Melody continues to win Boris's heart with her unique personality, leading them to eventually get married. A year has passed, and Boris and Melody's marriage has settled into a monotonous yet stable routine. However, their comfort is disrupted when Melody's mother, Marietta, unexpectedly arrives at their doorstep. Marietta explains that she and her husband John had feared that Melody had been kidnapped. She also reveals that John left her for a best friend and sold their house due to financial losses in the stock market, while relieved to discover that Melody had simply run away and was unharmed. Marietta is taken aback and somewhat disgusted by the shabby condition of the apartment her daughter now calls home. To her astonishment, Melody reveals that she is married and living with her husband in this place. Jumping to conclusions, Marietta assumes that her daughter's husband must be a struggling rock musician, unable to earn a respectable living. Following this, Marietta overhears Boris singing "Happy Birthday" and assumes it is his special day, only for Melody to explain that it is merely his routine while washing his hands. Then, as Marietta mentally prepares herself to meet her supposed rock musician son-in-law, her shock intensifies when she comes face to face with an aging man standing before her, whom her daughter claims to be her husband. Right from their first encounter, Marietta instantly grows a deep hatred towards Boris. In her eyes, he's an unhappy and boring old man who lacks charm and is too pessimistic for her daughter's taste. The next day, Melody takes her mother on a sightseeing tour around the vibrant streets of New York City, followed by a lunch gathering with Boris and his close friend Leo. As Marietta excuses herself to use the restroom, an attractive young man named Randy Lee James approaches her, showing a clear interest in Melody. Meanwhile, Leo finds himself immediately drawn to Marietta, despite their differing beliefs and ideologies. During their interactions, Marietta takes the opportunity to express her dissatisfaction with Melody's marriage to Boris. She tries to persuade her daughter to end her marriage, pointing out every flaw she perceives in her son-in-law. On the other hand, Melody stands firm in her commitment, unwavering in her belief that she is happily married. However, Marietta stubbornly refuses to acknowledge or accept this. Marietta then shares her encounter with a charming young man named Randy and encourages Melody to annul her marriage and pursue a relationship with him instead. Later that night, Marietta receives a phone call from Leo, inviting her to his home for a date. As they enjoy each other's company, Marietta proudly presents a collection of stunning and high-quality photographs she captured of Melody during her pageants and everyday life in Mississippi. Marietta shares that she had a passion for photography, but her ex-husband, John, disapproved and prevented her from pursuing it. Leo, recognizing Marietta's innate talent and understanding of photography, suggests that they consult his friend, Al Morgenstern, who runs a photography gallery. Thus, they consider reaching out to Al to explore potential opportunities for showcasing Marietta's talent. The following day, Leo takes Marietta's portfolio and presents it to Morgenstern. To Leo's delight, Morgenstern agrees that she possesses a unique talent for capturing pictures with a captivating quality. Not only that, but Morgenstern also begins to take a keen interest in Marietta herself. This newfound encouragement prompts Marietta to explore not only art, but also the vibrant lifestyle of New York City. Over the next few weeks, Marietta finds herself growing increasingly detached from her old life in the South. Her once conservative beliefs and values begin to melt away, replaced by the free-spirited existence of a bohemian artist. She delves into artistic photography, adopts new habits, clothing styles, and embraces this new lifestyle wholeheartedly. Perhaps the most surprising transformation of all is that the once religious and conservative Marietta enters into an open relationship with both Leo and Morgenstern. However, in the midst of all these changes, one thing that remains constant is Marietta's strong dislike for Boris. Despite her attempt to persuade Melody to marry Randy, her efforts prove pointless, as Melody refuses to even entertain the idea. Therefore, Marietta cunningly decides to use the charming Randy Lee James to bring an end to Melody's marriage. One day, while strolling through an outdoor market, Marietta plots a scheme to help Randy approach Melody. She cleverly runs into him and makes him initiate a conversation with Melody by asking her opinion on two handkerchiefs. However, the conversation quickly turns towards Melody's marriage, with Randy suggesting it won't last long. Melody, however, sees through Marietta's schemes and assures Randy that she is happily married, despite her mother's doubts. Melody then confronts her mother, requesting her to stop interfering in her life. Nevertheless, Marietta persists, urging Melody to broaden her horizons, much like she did. Later, Boris and Melody decide to go for a bike ride. While Melody finds joy in the small pleasures of life, Boris, as usual, expresses his dissatisfaction and grumbles about the state of the world. Fed up with Boris's constant complaints, Melody confronts him, suggesting that he might be intentionally avoiding enjoying things. Meanwhile, Boris is taken aback by Melody expressing her own thoughts and subtly belittles her by implying that her insights are too profound for someone he considers simple-minded. Elsewhere, Mariette is busy creating her artistic collection of sensual photographs when she receives a call from Randy, inquiring about Melody's whereabouts. Mariette shares that Melody is out shopping and encourages Randy to bump into her and take a chance. Randy then follows her advice and coincidentally meets Melody while she is shopping for clothes. He starts questioning her about her marriage to Boris, referring to him as a genius. Melody confesses that her relationship with Boris is actually unsatisfying. Later, Randy invites her to his boat, and she agrees to go. And once they arrive there, Melody finds herself torn between her conflicted feelings for the genius Boris and the attractive Randy. Finally, she lets go of her inhibitions, and they share a passionate kiss. A few days later, Melody's father, John, arrives at Boris and Melody's house with a sense of regret and hopes to mend their broken relationship. Like Mariette, John shares his concerns about his daughter marrying someone much older. However, he quickly redirects the conversation towards his ex-wife, admitting that he made a terrible mistake by leaving her for her best friend. Despite Boris and Melody's attempts to warn him that Mariette has moved on, John insists on seeing her. Melody even tries to caution her father about the changes in her mother, but he dismisses it without much thought. Eventually, the three of them attend Mariette's photography exhibit opening together, and John is unsettled by the significant changes he notices in his ex-wife since she moved to New York. John, feeling deeply upset, goes to a bar to find comfort by drinking and meets Howard, a man who has recently gone through a divorce himself and identifies as gay. Initially, John, who has long-held beliefs about homosexuality, is confused by Howard's attraction to another man. However, as their conversation flows, John opens up and admits that he has long been aware of his own homosexuality. Over time, Melody becomes increasingly distant from Boris. She finds herself drawn towards Randy, and their connection evolves into a full-blown affair. Eventually, Melody confesses her love for Randy to Boris and ends her relationship with him. She then lives with Randy on his boat, embracing their new chapter together. Meanwhile, after the painful breakup, Boris is heartbroken and overwhelmed with sadness. His emotions drive him to jump out of a window. However, fate intervenes, and he unexpectedly lands on a woman named Helena, causing her to suffer a broken arm and leg. Realizing the consequences of his actions, Boris decides to take responsibility. He visits Helena in the hospital and expresses his remorse. So, in an attempt to make amends, Boris offers to make it up to her in any way he can. To his surprise, Helena asks for a dinner date with him as a way to move forward. Finally, Boris throws a New Year's Eve party where everyone is in new relationships. Marietta with Leo and Morgenstern, John with Howard, Melody with Randy, and Boris with Helena. Every one of them becomes close friends, and they all exchange midnight kisses with their respective partners. It becomes evident that Melody and her parents, constrained by their conservative beliefs, struggled to fully embrace the liberal lifestyle they desired before. But once they break free and immerse themselves in the free spirits of New York, Marietta gives in to her emotions, while John rationalizes his choices without fear of society. In the end, only Boris addresses the audience by emphasizing the importance of seeking whatever brings one joy and fulfillment, as reflected in the movie title, Whatever Works.